So this is my masterclass, lesson 22, unaffected cards. Pretty much it's cards that have very little interaction, right? The idea that these are cards that you can kind of rely on for a long period of time throughout a game. These are cards that either they're permanent, like once you put them on the field, they'll stay on the field, and you'll have them throughout the game, or for however long they last, but usually they last pretty long. Chill here is just for as a placeholder for the tokens. Tokens tend to be they are battle cards, so they are affected by cards that interact and affect battle cards, but they don't have costs. So cards that typically says 3 costs or less, 4 costs or less, and stuff like that don't affect them. So it's a pseudo unaffectedness, but it's still an unaffectedness nonetheless. So that's an important detail. So anytime somebody, an effect says, bounce or destroy or send or KO something, 7 costs or less or whatever, something like that, it won't affect the tokens, so they're unaffected. So the idea is to take advantage of cards like that, take advantage of stuff that aren't really affected that much. That way you can, utilize them. Recently I was wondering if tokens counted as, well, in this game anyway. In other games they would count as skillless or normal or having not effects, unless an effect created the token and gave the token an effect, like clone tokens like in Magic. But in most card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, most tokens are skillless. They don't have a skill. They count as a battle card, or monster card, whatever, and they have no skill. And here I was wondering if it's the same thing. Does it apply the same way? Does a token also count as being a skillless? We know it counts as a battle card, but does it count as a skillless battle card? That's an important distinction, because there's effects that I would like to apply on a token that are for skillless cards. So if a token counts as skillless, then there you go. I can take advantage of that. So that's another benefit of tokens, other than not being affected. But that makes it useful that if a token is a battle card with no cost and skillless, and then use cards to power it up and give it double strike and all that good stuff, right? And stuff you normally would give to a battle card to do some stuff, like do some damage, which is the whole point of a battle card, right? Is to do some damage. If your opponent plays a card that says, oh, during active battle, KO a battle card, 5 costs or less. Well, the token is a battle card, however. It is a battle card. However, it doesn't have a cost. Therefore, the whole 5 or less thing is irrelevant. And that goes on to any other cards similar to that. There's certain cards that says, KO up to a certain amount of energy cost. You take that to account. So again, when cards say cost, tokens tend to be immune to those, which is the idea. They're essentially unaffected by those types of cards. So something to take into account. Unisons. There's like probably one card right now in the game that can affect unisons, like affect them, like shut them down and stuff like that. But other than that, you play it, it's almost like it has deflect, right? The fact that it's not a battle card, that makes it immune to cards that says KO battle card or target a battle card. It's not a leader, so if a card says, do this to a leader card or a battle card, the unison is immune because it's not either one of those, right? And then there's the mechanics of it, the marker system to protect it, to keep it on the field. So it loses markers, and once it runs out of markers, then it leaves the field. But until it runs out of markers, it'll stay on the field. So that's very important. That's an important detail. So of course you want to take advantage of it. A lot of times you want to take into account that if you're this is why I have 12 unisons, and people still disagree with the idea, but that's on them. But the reason I have 12 unisons in a deck is because one unison will be a utility unison. You know, it serves a purpose. Like I have it there because it's an engine. Like I have it because it helps the deck do something. You know, like it supports the deck. It maybe it powers up my leader, or it's a draw engine unison, right? Like I have it there just so I can draw, because maybe the leader doesn't draw, or I just want to add more draw power. So the leader, when I swing, I draw, and then the unison draws. So maybe I just want more draw power. So that's what that unison's for. Then the third unison is probably a defensive unison, more likely like a blocker unison or something. Like this one, for example. Like I would have like a 2-drop or maybe a 3-drop unison that's like utility. This would be the blocker unison. You know, being a 4-drop with blocker, has board wiping capabilities, so that makes up for the fact that it is a 4-drop. I'd rather play a 3-drop blocker like Raditz Giant Force, because it's, you know, lower cost, so I can play that blocker sooner than later. Plus it can block twice, but this has board wiping capabilities, plus it has draw capabilities. So this is just a great one. That's why I'm using this as an example for unisons, because it's one of the best unisons out there. There's tons of other good ones for other colors, obviously, but for blue, this is obviously a staple right here, a must-have. So he serves the board wiping ability, draw engine aspect, right, utility, and then he's a blocker, and then dual attack, so he could be a finisher in the right conditions. So he does a lot, so that's why he's just automatically a staple. But even though he does a lot, you know, his cost does come into a factor. Sometimes you need a 2-drop to do something, or a 3-drop. And since he's 4, mandatorily, minimum of 4, it's going to be hard to get him out on turn 2 or turn 3 when I would like to have him out. So I need other unisons to make up for that. Unisons I could play on turn 2, play on turn 3 before, to get me to turn 4, so I could play him on turn 4, right? Or if I ramp up, you know, ramp strategy and ramp him up and play him on turn 3. So there's stuff I could do. But the point is like, so I have a utility unison. I have a unison mostly for blocking, or maybe it has like a unique ability that give me an advantage, like the ability to play battle cards for free or something like that. So, you know, that obviously adds to utility, but, you know, you get the idea. But usually the first one is utility, the second one is usually like a blocker, and the last one, depending on the cost, usually 4 or higher, or more likely like a board wipe or something. He serves well to be a board wipe, but of course there's the 5-drop Super Saiyan 4 Goku, Protector of the Earth. He's the 5-drop one, and he's a board wiper, and essentially he gives you another turn if you use him right. So he's like a time walk board wipe. And that's why I would have like a Raditz, 4 Raditz unisons, 4 of this Go tanks, and 4 Super Saiyan 4 Goku Protector of the Earth unison, and that's a total of 12 unisons. And that's just why I have them, because they serve their purposes for what I'm using them for. And of course, any extra copies of them are energy. So they serve as energy. They serve as you know, what I need for what I need them. One is a utility. One is my out. This is my out to a lot of stuff. Like I said, board wiping, it matters, because you know its effect is -3. Choose up to 2 of my opponent's battle cards, ignore and bury, and place them at the bottom of my opponent's deck. That is very relevant, very important. That has done a lot for me when I play blue. When I play blue, gotta have 4 of them, because he does a lot. Being a blocker, being a dual attacker, being 20k. You know, the potential draw engine to counter hand control decks, the -3 ability to clear boards, and, you know, again, 20k dual attack, so I can get rid of 2 battle cards with his -3 ability, and then attack 2 battle cards, and right there get rid of 4 battle cards. Just do that alone. Being plus being 20k dual attack, I can attack a unison with it twice, so it's almost like double striking. Swing at it twice. Even if I swing at it, my opponent like negates the first attack. All right, well, I'll swing again. At least I'll take 1 marker off. If I can't take 2 markers off of another unison, I'll at least take 1. I was in a scenario where I used 1 copy of this already on the field, took away 2 markers, played a second one, dealt 2 more. You know what I mean? Of course, I did the +2 thing. I mean, -2 things I could draw. You know, plus, fill my hand back up, keep my hand nice and thick, and went in for 2 more attacks and KO'd the the unison. So I was able to take 4 markers off of a unison just by playing 2 of these. One that I obviously played a turn earlier, and one that I played the turn after. So you get the idea. So very, very, very good card. So again, it's a unison, so it's immune to a lot of stuff. You want another scenario I was saying, like the first unison is a utility, like it's something I use as an engine, and then the second one is probably like a defensive blocker or something, or maybe a board wipe, and then the third one more likely would be a finisher. So that's like the real like setup. I try to have a utility, something that helps the deck, you know, function, you know, do some engine thing, and then I got my defensive card will be the second unison, and the third unison will usually be a unison that has a purpose for finishing, end game unison, best way to call it. So it's my end game unison. So I got my early game, you know, utility unison, then I got my board wipe unison or defensive unison, which will be the one in the middle, the second one unison, and then the third unison will be my end game unison, you know, the unison that I'll use against later in the game. So that's the best way to explain why. I mean, that's the way I think, you know. I have one unison I play as soon as the game starts, I have a unison I play mid-game, and I have a unison I play close to the end of the game. That's why I have 12 unisons. Hopefully that explains for those who care about the whole 12 unison thing, but they're great, you know, unisons are great. Now, why would I have more than 12? Just because they're that awesome. They're pretty much unaffected by a lot of stuff, so it doesn't hurt to have extra unisons that are utility, extra unisons that are late game unisons, instead of just relying on one specific unison to try to use it at you know, turn 4 or 5 or something, that to try to go for game. You know, having another unison as an option depending on the matchup situation. Sometimes going wide is the best course of action in a certain matchup, and sometimes going tall is a best course of action. So you got to take that into account. Again, I said unisons are not battle cards, not leader cards. So a lot of cards that affect them won't affect them, especially with stuff like charismatic villain being a thing. I love having unisons for that, especially that situation, because especially as a finisher is what I'm saying. Play a unison as a finisher, because it's pretty much like having deflect and barrier. I don't have to worry about charismatic villain, Frieza, you know, popping my unison before I get to use it to go for game, because it's a unison, it's unaffected by charismatic villain. So, and you know, don't have to worry about a what is it? The time? No, what was it? Trunks, God Sealing Trunks. Don't gotta worry about that. So I don't gotta worry about that card. Don't gotta worry about Yamcha Barrage, you know, Barrage, Yamcha, and Charismatic Villain. I take those 3 to account when I see my opponent has a unison. So if my opponent has a blue unison, God Sealing. Right? If they have a green unison, Charismatic Villain. If they have the red unison, probably they have Yamcha Barrage. So those are the 3 things I take to account when my opponent has a unison. And I'm like, all right, well, the best way to deal with those 3 cards will be to play a unison. So I play a unison, and that lets me avoid those 3 cards being a problem. Another way you can avoid those 3 cards being a problem is a battle card that has barrier and deflect, because you know, deflect will help you against God Sealing, barrier will help you against charismatic villain, and plus deflect and barrier will help you against what's his name, Yamcha Barrage. So a battle card that has both deflect and barrier, which is just busted to have those 2 things, that just says this card is unaffected by the game itself, unaffected by your opponent's cards, essentially, right? So you gotta love stuff like that. And I'm using this Gogeta Hero Revived as an example because he's 30k, plus he has both deflect and barrier, so he's a good example of. Oh, plus he also has triple strike. That's awesome. So he's perfect. So as a good example of deflect, barrier, how powerful that is combined, and that's depending what you want your finisher to have is both of those, or you know, one versus the other. That's why sometimes it's a good idea to have two finishers. If they're battle cards, you want one with barrier and one with deflect, because it'll be hard to get a deflect barrier battle card. So you should have one that has barrier and one that has deflect, depending on your matchup. So the deflect will only come in if your opponent has like a blue unison, because then, you know, God Sealing is a factor. But of course there are other counterplay cards out there you have to worry about, and you take that into account. So if you know your opponent might be able to counterplay you playing your finisher, then you want to play the one with deflect. If your opponent is more likely going to do something like a charismatic villain or something similar to that, then you want to play the one with barrier. Or let's say they have a card that's active battle and it has the ability to KO a battle card during the battle, then that's why cards that aren't battle cards are good against those types of cards. And a battle card that has barrier makes it just as good as a card that doesn't have, that isn't a unison leader, you know, type of, or token. So barrier, very important. Barrier makes you unaffected. We have this just as the idea for leaders. Obviously, they're usually unaffected by a lot of things. They're obviously unaffected by cards that, you know, that affects battle cards. You know, so stuff like, I use this as an example. The Mafuba. You know, Mafuba can only work on battle cards. It can't be used on unisons. Obviously, it can't be used on leaders, because it can only be used like on battle cards. So that's why, you know, relying on your unison, not your leader, as your finisher or as your main attacker is obviously always a good idea. One, it will always be there. It won't leave the field like how unison would leave the field. It won't leave the field like how a token will leave the field, and it definitely won't leave the field like how a battle card will leave the field. So out of all these card types, a leader will always be there, right, to lead the way. So taking advantage of that, having a leader that's a finisher, you know, leader that can help you, you know, win the game, comes in handy, because one, it's a leader, so it's immune to a lot of cards. It's immune to cards that KO battle cards, or, you know, during the battle steps. So obviously the leader is the best way to finish the game, because you don't have to worry about it getting KO'd, because it's a leader, not a battle card. And then just leaders just don't get battle card KO'd anyway. So even if your opponent reduces your battle card power, your leader's power down to 0 or -0 through effects, well, it's not going to leave the field. It's a leader. It's going to stay there. So gotta love having a permanent thing on the field that you can rely on, which is why you should take into consideration when you build a deck that you do have the leader. It's going to be there. You might want to rely on it when it comes to your end game, when it comes to winning the game. I know some people don't. I know some people just use the leader like a utility, just to draw, or just to activate whatever kind of effects it might have, but then rely on like a battle card or some other strategy. You know, mostly it's a battle card. Mostly a battle card to try to win the game, but then if their opponent's prepared and their opponent has cards that can interact with the battle card or stop the battle card, then that's kind of pointless. You put everything into that battle card and you don't win, because your opponent was prepared for battle cards, prepared to defend against battle cards. But they're usually not prepared to defend against a leader, so that's why you want to take advantage of your leader being a finisher. You know, maybe using tokens as finishers. You know, definitely unison as a finisher if you got the right unison that can be a finisher. And then we got extra cards. An extra card can be a finisher, aka a win con. You know, it could be something you could do. The fact is, a card that is an extra card makes it hard for it to be dealt with, unless your opponent, depending on what kind of extra card, like if it's a negate or something, your opponent could have a counter. There's that. But again, it's a counter. They need a specific card to deal with a specific card. But on average, most extra cards, you just play them and then that's it. Your opponent's not really going to be trying to negate them or stop or anything, because there's pretty much nothing to stop them. So if the extra card has the ability to help you deal damage, you know, gives you the ability to give something double strike, like encouraging Presence Manaka can give the leader double strike or something like that, or can give a power boost, or you know, that's why Senzu Being is so good, because it's a, you know, it's a extra card with an active battle ability to give any card you use it on a 5k boost for the duration of the turn, which you can consider like a combo. And there's some cards that do affect cards in the combo area, so using an extra card for combo purposes is useful, like using the 4-star ball. That's a card you can use with your leader card or battle card, and give it 5k boost, you know, so you can use it to combo and it's free to play. So that right there is an extra card you can rely on to use as a combo, especially if you're going up against a deck that has cards that are anti-combo. They have effects that try to stop you from comboing or taking cards from your combo area and sending it to a drop. You can play this card instead because it's an extra card that is giving you a boost. It is not a battle card that you're using for combo power, therefore your opponent won't be able to interact with it, because it's an, you know, it's an extra card that is that's using an effect, like Senzu Being, for example, stuff like that. And of course, as you can see, card survey below, I'm using it as an illustration of an extra card that you could just play it when you have no battle cards. Just tap 2 blue, 3 red, and just deal your opponent 1 damage and go for game. You know what I mean? And you don't have to worry about your opponent, you know, countering this or stopping it, because, you know, it's an extra card. It's not a counter card, so it can't be countered, right? Maybe in the future they'll create cards that can stop or negate extra cards. Maybe there is one in the game right now. Maybe I heard recently that there was a card that has an ability that can negate an extra card, a skill. But for now, pretty much for years since that one, extra cards, you just use them and then that's it. Use them and don't gotta worry about somebody stopping them. So unaffected, right? Extra cards are unaffected. Field cards, typically there's no way of getting rid of field cards, except there's like maybe 4 or 5 cards now, but there wasn't for a long time. So once you play a field card, it just stayed there, and they're just, nothing really got rid of them like that. You know, technically there's some cards like a step 1 Broly, when he's awakened, can get rid of it, but that was about it around that time. But then later on they made a couple cards that can deal with field cards, but no one really plays them like that. So pretty much once you play a field card, it'll just be there until the game is over. So take advantage of that. Again, unaffected just because A, no one's trying to get rid of it, or B, it just can't be getting rid of. This is a good card as an example of the can't be getting rid of, because this has a permanent. This card cannot be removed from the battle area by your opponent's card skills. So even if there was a unison that gets rid of field cards, this can't be getting rid of. So they made sure card skills can't get rid of it. So that means leaders can't get rid of it, unisons can't get rid of it, extra cards can't get rid of it, battle cards can't get rid of it. Nothing can get rid of it unless they create something that's not a skill. Yep. This card is here to stay. So once it hits the field, it stays there until the game is over. So again, something else that's not affected, right? And yeah, so you get the idea. That's like, take that into account. You know, like if you have stuff that can make tokens, you know, consider that's really good. That, you know, the tokens, especially tokens, you know, that don't have cost, obviously, because they don't. You can take advantage of that. You can exploit that. Plus them being skillless, you can exploit that. And same thing with unisons. You know, it doesn't hurt to have more than however many unisons you currently have, because if you add a unison specifically as a finisher, a unison you specifically will play at, you know, late game and tap out and play it and go for game, you know, as your finisher instead of going the battle card route, then, you know, it makes sense to play, you know, more unisons, because again, like I said, they're pretty much immune to, you know, cards in the game. So, you know, Once you play, you don't have to wait and ask your opponent for a response. Don't have to worry about your opponent saying, wait, I got a response, let me play this card, because y'all played that card, and now, you know, I'm interacting with you, and now I'm messing up your plans to win. So, and that should be the end of the video.